Good morning, sir.
Morning, Amina.
Sir. Good morning, sir.
Satish, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning. So what you guys did yesterday? Yesterday I have to cancel the call the last minute. Guys learned anything? Or we're working?
எஸ் சார் அந்த நோட் கொஞ்சம் பார்த்தேன் சார். நேற்று ஆக்சுவலாக ஒரு ஒர்க் சொல்லியிருந்தீங்களா அந்த
ஃபங்க்ஷன்ஸ் இது சொல்லி
டோக்கனுக்கு என் பண்ண சொல்லி என் பாயிண்ட் அது கொஞ்சம் ப்ராப்ளமாக இருக்கு. நம்ம இந்த கால் முடிஞ்ச பிறகு கொஞ்சம் கனெக்ட் பண்ண முடியுமா? இந்த
ஓகே. ராஜேஷ்ட பேசுனீங்களா?
அவங்கள்ட்டையும் பேசினேன். அது என்னன்னா கெஸ்ட் யூசர் லா போட்டு அதை ஃபைன் பண்ணலாம்னு நினச்சோம். பட் அது வந்து ஷேக் மாதர் ப்ரோ வந்து அது பண்ணாண்டா அதில் வந்து ஹேக்கர்ஸ் ஏதாவது பண்றதுக்கு வாய்ப்பு இருக்கு அப்படி பண்ணா அப்படின்னு சொல்லி சொன்னாங்க. இந்த மீட் முடிஞ்சதுக்கு நம்ம கனெக்ட் பண்ணுவோமா?
Yeah, sure. Recording started. Okay, I need to start. Okay, it's already going on. Good. Okay, while we wait for others, என்ன பண்ணலாம்னா இதில் மர்ஜ் ரிக்வெஸ்ட் வந்துட்டு ரிவ்யூ பண்ணணும். சத்யன் கால் இருக்காரா? Is Dinesh there? Dinesh, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this is the merge request that you raised. Okay, there is a conflict.
Okay.
So we need to resolve the conflict.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. The reason for the conflict is you are adding other folders in your merge request.
Already I add the folder, but when I send the merge request on that time, I have to remove all the folders, and after that, I have to send the merge request for you.
Okay, let me show how to do that. Okay, this is Dinesh, right? Dinesh. I'm in that repository. Let me pick Dinesh. Pull your branch. So this has all your changes. So do a git pull origin main. Yeah. Okay, so there is a conflict. What happens is this Sendil Kumar sample.js was deleted.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you have that file. So we need to remove. The conflict would be gone. Changes, merge request, sample.js. So he bringing in all the changes. I think I made a mistake. Yeah, and I'm committing your changes now. Okay, which I have latest pulled from the main branch. Syncing all the changes. Go to git. Oh, your merge request conflict should have been gone. So you just pulled the changes from main branch and then pushed. So these are your changes. Still,
yes,
this should not be in your merge request. Can you remove this? Sindel Kumar, Imran Nasir, Sulaiman. You are basically.
Yeah, already I removed the folder in my project.
Now, when you remove the folder, you should not be deleting their files. Okay. Sample.js. This was deleted by your file. Just copying the file. .js. Yeah. Send the file back. So your MR should not contain Sindil's file. Still, it is there. There is some empty space I missed, so that's why it is throwing error. Well, thinking. Okay, now Sindil file is gone, right? Now similarly, Imran, Nasir, you should not delete their content. Okay, your changes should contain only your folder changes, not Imran, Nasir, Sulaiman, or this demo.js changes. Okay, can you revert these three, like what I did now?
Yes, sir, I understand.
Okay. Okay, so similarly, there are other merge requests where I see conflicts. The one that Azim created, there is some conflict. And files conflict. Resolve the conflict and let me know. Okay. Ashwin, there is a conflict. Amina, there is no conflict, but the reason why I didn't merge yours is it was not under your folder. Like there is no folder named Amina. So if you can create this file inside a folder named Amina, I will do the merge. Yeah, that's why your MAR was not merged. And this is my changes. Satyan, yes. Satyan, are you there in the call, Satyan, now? Okay, I believe he's not there. So whenever you guys create a merge request, just to make sure you are having your changes only reflect in the merge request, okay, and not including others' changes. That is very critical. Okay, and there should be some change. You don't create a blank merge request. That is unfair. Okay, so please check your merge request. Okay, hope we are all here. Let me switch. Should I increase the size? Here and zoom in. Is this okay? Okay, I take that as a yes. Okay. See, today I want to talk about two things which we haven't spoke earlier. We spoke about this earlier, but I just want to give more context to it. This is very critical. And the promises and async await, another critical feature in JavaScript. Are we good to start?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we read or we did variables, right? So there are three ways we can declare a variable: let, const, and var. Using these keywords, we can define variables. We talked about this earlier. Do we have any questions on this?
No, sir.
Okay, good. Now, we also discussed about the scope. Okay, so even all of these things are creating a variable, but the scope there is a difference between let and where, right? That defines the scope. So the let is your local. This is your constant. This is your global. Okay. When I say local, what it means is the scope is within a block, code block. Okay, local to this block. When it is global to the file, or like the, what do I call, library slash or application. Okay, it's not called it as file, it is application for simplicity. Okay, so that's where the scope differs. Okay, let's see an example of why this let where is very critical, how to utilize that. Okay, functions closure. Okay, so I've written one function. Okay, I'll just walk you guys with what the function does. Okay, it's a very simple function. This is function declaration. So because it is a declaration, hoisting happens and the function can be invoked anywhere. Okay, this we have already seen. Now inside the function, I'm just verifying the scope of each variable that I have declared. So one I have declared with let this I should set it to let first. So all the variables I have declared with let. So which means the scope of the variables are so this let is within this whole scope. Okay, the let that is declared is within the scope, and the let that I have declared here v2 is within this scope from here to here. The v2 is accessible within the scope. v4 on the other hand is accessible only within the scope. Is that scope part clear? So I have written one function. Okay. So first of all, we have multiple ways of declaring variable. Okay. And the variable, the way how we declare determines or impacts its accessibility. That means scope. Okay. So we are, as part of the closure, we are trying to understand the scope of where the variable can be accessed. To start with, I'm declaring all variables as let. What let does is the scope of this variable is within the code block that they are declared. I have declared let v1 variable in line number 2. I have declared a variable v3 in line number 30. Okay, so the scope of v1, v3 is the whole code. Okay. Now inside the function, I have declared one more variable called v2. This variable scope is within the function. So this v2 is accessed only within the function. It cannot be accessed outside. Okay. Similarly, I have declared one more variable called v4, whose scope is only this. It cannot be accessed beyond this. Okay. So whenever you declare a variable, you need to understand how, where it can be used. When to use let, when to use where. Is that clear, Satish?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me. Yeah.
What is why we can use where also, right?
True. We can use where. Okay. Let's talk about the memory management a little bit later. But yes, we can use where. Okay. That's what we are checking now. Okay. Now I'll copy this and let me run this. So I have declined with all let. Okay. So first it says function called after v1. Okay. So first of all, let me remove this. Let me call it before. What will happen is the system will throw an error. Okay. That v1 is not declared. So function ran check is called it comes here and it is throwing an error that v4 is not accessible, number one. It says v4 is not accessible, and after that it says the values of v1, and it is throwing v1 is not initialized, cannot be accessed before initialization. Okay, I was expecting a different error, but that's fine. So it's saying v1 is before initialization, it cannot be accessed. Okay. So I am commenting the before part. So I am initializing v1, okay, and then calling the rank check function. So now I have declared v1. So the v1 is available. Now I'm not getting error in v1. I'm getting error in v3 because the scope of v3 is starts from here. Okay, so since JavaScript is interpreter, it is executing line by line, and when it try to get the value of v3, it is not able to get the value. So it is saying cannot access v3 without initialization. Now, if I make this as a variable, right? We should be able to access v3, okay, without that initialization error. So first time when it calls, it says it is undefined, and before v3 declaration, okay, it still says it is undefined. After v3's declaration, it says v3 is third. So if you put where, and if you want to use it in a function, you have to make sure it is properly initialized. That's why all the initialization happens at the beginning of the file. In the JavaScript file, the first thing after declaring the function, we define all the properties, all the variables. Okay. Now, as Satish asked, yes, instead of let, I can use all where. That's a very good question. Anyone know the anyone know the impact of using where instead of let? So since it has the global scope where, so anything that you declare, the entire, there is a concept called garbage collection, right? Anyone know what it does? Garbage collector. All are from computer science background, or most of you guys from computer science background. Garbage collection. Guys awake? Wild guess. What could be garbage collection?
Memory to store the data.
Yes, everything is in memory. Computers are nothing but memory file system. Okay. What is garbage collection means? Yes, there is no right wrong answers.
Freeing up unwanted memories.
Yeah, freeing up unwanted memory. So basically garbage collector is whichever unused memory is there, the system would clear it up or clean it up. Okay. Whenever you use where, what happens is it occupies space because the scope is at the application level. So it occupies memory till the life cycle of the application. Okay. Whenever we declare let, the life cycle is within the scope. So what happens is if you declare let here, after the scope is complete, this memory is freed immediately. If you declare variable, the memory is not freed till the entire application is executed. So if you use where, there is the harm, the impact is it consumes more memory. And whenever program runs, it runs in your main memory. The more vars you declare, the more memory it occupies. So that's why the scoping is very important. You don't want to declare var for everything. You declare let and keep your application consume less memory or efficient memory allocation. Make sense? Why not use var?
Yes, sir.
Use only let. Okay. And where we generally use it for like, very limited fields. We don't want to put var for everything. If I put var here for v4, right? The scope of this variable is not even useful beyond this function. So why I should use var? Why I have to allocate a memory which is not needed, right? So understand when to use let and when to use var, and understanding the scope is very critical. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Another interesting thing that I wanted to talk is, functions. Okay, so JavaScript is interpreted, right? So it executes one line at a time. Okay, and what it means is like, sorry, it's not executing one line at a time. Interpreter is the transformation of the human readable format to machine code happens at the execution time. Okay, that's what it is. And the functions, like even though JavaScript supports asynchronous process, what it means is like, the system can perform activities asynchronously. Okay, there is a concept called event loop. Okay, you guys can Google JS event loop. Okay, so now this is very critical to make sure JavaScript, the concurrency, the asynchronous executions are happened smoothly. Okay, so what it does is basically it prioritize what function to run. So there was one good example I have seen. So first it executes your functions. That's the priority. I'll try to explain this more in detail. So it executes your functions first, all your callbacks, everything, and it executes API methods or something. JS event order. Event order JavaScript. No, it's fine. So it executes all the function. This is priority one, and then let me call this. This is start. This is just a message. This is the end, and then it executes your functions, callbacks, and I forgot the other domain. I will try to cover it up in the next session. What this event loop means. Basically, this event loop is very critical to make sure there are no blocking. And one of that feature is the promises and async await. Okay, so when a function runs, basically, if that function has to be performed independently, okay, we generally use promises and async await. So first we'll check with the async function. Okay, so as part of the asyncs, generally all your API executions, right, which can be performed independently or it takes some time. Okay, at that time we don't want to wait, or we don't want to block the operations. Okay, so generally we use promise or async await. Okay, what promise does is, after this function execution, we call the dot then. So it basically resolve, and there's some error handling happens in the promise. Okay, so the fetch returns a promise, and that promise is handled in the dot then. So basically, first this operation runs, and after that operation, the dot then this operation runs. After this, this dot then executes. Okay, so all of this execution happens in sequence. Okay, the beauty is that this execution is asynchronous. So you'll get line number 15 executed. Immediately after that, line number 19 will get executed. It doesn't wait for this processing to complete. Okay, so line number 19 gets executed. I'll just show it here. So this promise runs in sequence, and this is executed asynchronously. So there is no wait happens. At line number 15 executes, and it asynchronously runs, and line number 19 executes immediately. Okay, so let me copy this path. And this function is just transforming data JSON into an array. That's all it does. So the stability function, you can keep that in mind. So I've declared two arrays, one to process the promise response and another one to process the async response. Okay. So let me run this, the promise. If we can notice, we just put a console console.log before calling promise function. Okay. Relative path. Okay, so before calling promise function, and then I am getting this response. I'll put the line in number 20. Okay, so here this method is called, and the process is running asynchronously, and we are executing line number 20. Okay, and after that there is a async function I have declared. So this is one operation performed in two different ways. One is using promise, which is fetching all the users from this dummy API, and another one is async function, which is fetching all the users from the same API. Okay, and I declared the async function, and I'm calling this async function as line number 34. Okay, let me put a console log before calling async function. Okay, and here I put the line number as well, line number 36. Okay, so here what happened is we are calling the promise function, line number 20 get executed. We calling the async function, line number 36 get executed. Okay, after this fetch happened, okay, the dot then gets executed, and then this dot then get executed, which is calling the JSON to array, which says that JSON to array called from promise function, which is returning an array of 30 elements. Okay, and we are calling the same JSON to array function in the async, so that is also getting executed. Okay. So far, you can understand what is the challenge we have. I want to see the length here itself, but I'm not getting that. I'm getting undefined. I'm getting 0. Is the problem clear or it's not clear? I want this async operation. I want to wait for this async operation to complete this promise. I want to wait for this promise to be processed, and then I want this to run. Problem statement understood? If not, I'm happy to explain it again.
Yes, sir, understood.
Okay, good. Okay, so in order for this promise to be processed, okay, if you want to hold your execution, okay, or if you want to wait for this process to complete, we use a keyword called await. Okay, so this await, what it does is it waits for this promise to resolve. It doesn't skip processing, or it will not execute line number 20 immediately. So with the await keyword, so we are waiting for promise to complete. Once it is complete, then we are proceeding with our operation. So we are using await in front of the promise. So promise controls the sequence. This dot then, via dot then, we are able to control how to do the resolve reject. Okay, so basically this handles it. The output, we get the response JSON is taken, and that is passed as input. We are processing that input. So if you want to do another operation, you can do another dot then. Okay, I'll just do one dot then in between. Okay, basically I don't want to do anything. If I don't do anything, actually it won't pass this output to this function, so it will throw an error. So show that to you guys. Anyway, we'll do this. Okay, I'm putting an empty then. Unfortunately, this will impact our output. Okay, so it is not the right way of handling. So let me just take this input and return the input as it is. No further processing, nothing. That is a I'll put dot then in a better example. Okay, and we'll check it one more time. Okay, let me create one more function. New file promise.js. Okay, so in promise.js, I want to declare a function that is called f1 console.log side f1. Okay, f1 run it dot then I'll call f2 dot then I'll call f3. So f2 f3 promise, copy relative path. Copy relative path. Where relative path. Not read properties of undefined. Okay, I understand. Sorry for the confusion, guys. Callback is not a function. I declared callback. Okay, I'll declare this callback effectively, and then I'll explain the dot then sequence. Okay, so basically the promise works by handling the callbacks. I forgot how the callbacks were declared. Okay, so coming back to this example, okay, where we have the fetch callback JavaScript fetch API. Basically, this fetch returns a callback on the successful execution. Okay, and that callback is then passed to this bin, and this arrow function returns one parameter which is passed to the following dot then. Okay, So this callback, I am not able to put this here in the promise. I'll put an example and then I'll share it with you guys. Okay. So, okay, by using await, we are able to wait on the callback from the promise. And in this line number where we have declined fetch users as asynchronous, okay, we could make this asynchronous hold or wait using the await keyword. So when we use the await keyword, this function also will wait for this function to complete, asynchronous function to complete, and then the line number 36 will be executed. So you use the await in order to wait for a function to complete. And if you want to use await, it can be used only within an async function. If I don't use the async function, the await cannot be used. So await can be used inside async, and only functions which are declared as asynchronous can be called or can be prefixed with await. If the function is not async, I cannot use await. Just take this will throw an error because it is not a synchronous function. So await won't work. So await works only if it is a asynchronous function. Fetch is a synchronous function, so this await works. Fetch users is an asynchronous function which we declared. Await works. Otherwise, await has no impact, no value. So the promise handling and async await, something that we need to be very clear. Okay, now I think we have time. Let me check the callback. So meanwhile, I want to cover one more ES6 module and then we'll come back to callback. But async await, is this part clear? This is without callback. It basically waits for execution to complete with the await keyword, and this is applied only if you have async function. Otherwise, it won't. Anyway, I have added this in the merge request, so you guys would be able to access Ria's folder in the repo. Okay, this function is there, and this API is dummy API, can be accessed by anyone. Another important thing on JavaScript, right? So we said we are writing functions to reuse the code. Okay. Similarly, if we have written functions in a library, okay. So here I have written one function which will read data. So read API. Okay, I'll call it as read API. So this function basically reads the data from dummy API and returns that result. That's all it is doing. Okay. Now I made this asynchronous function and I'm exporting this so that this code can be used in other places. For example, I have this import JS, which is basically importing the function from the different JS file and then using that function in the execution. Okay, so this read API is declared in a different file. By exporting, I'm able to use it in another function. So this is one way of making your code reusable. Okay. So if I run this, copy relative path, since I put await, all of this will wait. If I don't do await, so basically everything is undefined. If I do await, it will wait for the execution to complete and I will get proper data. So you guys should have noticed the difference. So it is just passing one parameter, properties, and in the dummy API, I'm just validating whether this is a valid item to query, and this API gets executed, and that response is returned back to the function. So it is waiting for the response, and that array is assigned to this variable, and we are just showing the length. Okay. So ES6 supports this export. Earlier, the export was not very user friendly, but now the export, like, not only function, you can export a variable constant, and you can export multiple functions, classes, all of those things you can export. If you guys have seen in Lightning Web Components, have you noticed an export anywhere? In Lightning Web Component, have you guys noticed an export?
Yes, sir.
Where you have noticed?
Inside the JS file.
See, so we are making use of the ES6 feature in Lightning Web Component, so that way the Lightning framework handles this method effectively. So import, we are reusing the component, reusing the code. And export, we are exposing this code so that it can be handled by the framework on rendering our file. Yeah. So ES6, like, this feature is very useful and very powerful. So I want you guys to be aware of that, so that your code, you don't have to write code for everything everywhere. So you can just create modules, and that modules can be imported and used. Okay. Yes. Have anyone have any experience on callback? Yes, no? I take that as a no. So callback. So callback is a function passed as argument to another function. Okay, I have promise here. So this is a callback function. Pass argument to another function. In F1, I want to pass this as an argument. Okay. Okay. The callback function can run another function as finished. My first, my second, displaying hello. Okay. Right click, copy relative path. So I declared one function. I'm using that function as a variable in F1. Is, and I have to rename this. Okay. Cannot read properties of undefined. We could call a calculator function I've defined a calculator function. Okay. It returns a value that is used here. Here, this is a good example where I say this is my callback. And my callback is, I'm saying my displayer. Help me guys, I'm not so good with callback. I should rename this FM callback. Let me call this as FM callback. In function 1, so there are 25 plus brilliant people and no one is able to help. Leave that F1 and in relative path. Okay, function is not defined. Cool. Cannot read the properties of undefined. How does that promise work? X is a callback function. I got promises. What is this? Okay, I have to declare promise first. And that then only I can use then. I cannot use it on a simple function. Okay, interesting. Let me declare one promise. First, let me complete callback. So callback where I can pass one function as a parameter. In F1, I'm calling callback. Okay, let me finish this first. Okay, so I'm able to define a callback. And that callback is passed as a variable to one function. And similarly to F2, F1 callback. C. Okay, that works. I'm able to pass function as a parameter and that parameter can be accessed. Callback is clear. Now if I go to promise, I have to declare a promise. Okay, which has a resolve reject. Okay, so now if F1, I want to declare it as a promise. But solve my reject. I will say callback. And successful, I will do the callback. F1, that's it. Now I declared one promise, which is accepting one resolve and one reject. And on resolve, I'm saying when successful, you will return this. Okay, F1. Yeah. F1 is not a function. And my promise dot then function. Ah.
We declare a function as variable.
Yes, I've declared function as a variable.
Then why we need to give a parenthesis in F1 open close parenthesis in line number 18? If you call a function, we need to give it.
Okay, let me call this function F1, right? Okay, which returns P1, a promise. It is returning a promise. Okay. So what I want to do is now F1, it returns a promise, and that promise is passed to this then. Now, copy relative path. Okay. So we declared one function. If the function returns a promise, and dot then will take that promise and it will process. If I say after F1, no, completed F1 and in then, that is okay. Now if I want to do another then to this, completed F1 then and in second then. Okay, so as long as a promise is returned, we are returning a promise, it is passing that value. But how do I pass it as a parameter to the promise? That part I'm not clear. Param1, let me call this as param1. Okay. Now function 1 doesn't accept any parameters. It can accept param, return p1 of param. F1, I'll say 1. Promise cannot accept parameters. Part is clear. Okay. I'm declaring a function. I don't know how to pass parameter to a function. Sorry, to a promise. Okay. So we need to, for the promise, we need a promise object which has 2 parameters, which is on how to handle on success, what to handle on failure. And we can utilize .then because this function returns a promise, and in the promise we can use .then. We calling a successful. I want to know how to pass parameter to that. And this .then on execution, I think it is also returning a promise. That's why this keeps going. Passing a function as parameter here. And this function is not doing anything with this callback. You can just call it. Yeah, let me spend some time on the promise, when to use the promise, how to use the promise, and then I'll get back to you guys. Okay. Meanwhile, if you guys can do some R&D on other things what we discussed today, try some exercises, that would be helpful. This dummy API is available for usage for everyone. So make use of this to test your fetches. Okay, all these resources are available. And the response that we get from the dummy API is an array, and you can access them individually. Just put one console log. Two. So this is an object, and if you can manipulate the object, that would be nice. Equal to this p dot description. So try to play around this object. That would help you guys, like, understand more of how to manipulate the responses from an API. And understanding APIs are very crucial. So try to learn how to parse the JSON and how to transfer the JSON into an object. Okay. Let me add all of this. Commit sync. I create a merge request already, I believe. So all the changes which I have put are available here. You can refer this if you have any questions. Okay. So after session, code merge. You can do a git pull from the main branch, and you guys would be able to access the code. Great. So once you guys fix the MR, I would merge it. Okay. I'll stop sharing. I'll stop the recording as well. If you have questions, we can talk about it. Otherwise, we'll connect on